the Lightning Process podcast. Using the tools of the mind-body connection for health and happiness.
Hi and welcome to the Lightning Process podcast. I'm Dr. Phil. Welcome to this episode, which is all about perfectionism. Perfectionism is a real issue for many people and is incredibly damaging for your health. So first of all, what is it? Perfectionism is where you try and do everything right all the time. You're trying to get everything perfect. And there's a big problem with perfectionism, which is it's impossible to achieve. So you spend all your time trying to do something that's impossible. And whatever you achieve, no matter how good it is, so let's say you get 100% in an exam, or you get A's or A stars or whatever the top grade is, you'll always have a sense that you could have done a bit more, you could have done better. And so this is a big problem with perfectionism. Perfectionism steals joy from your life, because whatever you achieve, it will feel like it just wasn't quite good enough. There's a sense with perfectionism that when I've done this, then I'll be happy, then I can relax. And so it generates a certain amount of underlying levels of stress about everything. It's like nothing's quite as it should be, so you have to work harder, strive more. And this leads, in many cases, to burnout, to unhappiness, to anxiety, and all these things put huge amounts of load on our nervous system because we're kind of always on. So if this sounds like you or somebody you know, you may recognize it, this sense of, oh, that was good, but, or that could have been better, or that wasn't as good as last time, or everybody thinks I did well, but if they really knew the errors I made, they wouldn't think that. So being super hard on yourself. If you find that you're running a perfectionist pattern, which is very, very common, lots of people are trained into it because we think, well, if we work hard, we'll do well, we'll get grades that people like, we'll be approved of, we'll be a success. So you can understand why perfectionism is such a problem for so many people. It's very common, it's supported by the educational system and how many things in the world work. So we can see how people run into a perfectionism pattern. But if you notice that it's you that's doing this, then you need to find ways to solve it. Lightning process is one way to do it, lots of other ways as well. But it's certainly something we come across a lot in the lightning process. People who feel that they just have to work harder and drive themselves more and more and more. And this is one of the things that just puts so much pressure on the nervous system and the body's physiology. And when you're ill and you're trying to get well, trying to run perfectionism patterns at the same time are really problematic. And you can see it in a lot of people who get stuck. They put so much pressure on themselves when they're recovering that pressure, which you'd imagine would help you to get well, actually does exactly the opposite. It comes back to some other stuff I was talking about before about being nice to yourself. Being nice to yourself is a really important part of improving your health and moving forwards and being kind in that process. If you're running perfectionism on health problems, you're not being kind to yourself, and it will take a lot longer to get well. And sometimes you can completely escape getting well because there's so much drain on your system by perfectionism. Another pattern that's quite linked to perfectionism is over-analysis. This is where, so there's nothing wrong with analysis, being analytical and thinking about things, thinking through them rationally and logically is a really useful skill. But when we do it all the time, and we're questioning things again and again and again and again, it's similar to perfectionism in that we can't take anything at face value. We start to see the flaws and problems in anything. We start to get really complicated about something. So somebody says, this is nice. Someone who's overanalyzing will go, is it really? Do they really mean it? Are they just saying that? All those extra levels of computation take energy and, again, put us into stress. They don't create ease and pleasure and softness. They create hardness and difficulty. So if you're running both those patterns, perfectionism, so feeling that what you did wasn't good enough, not being able to get joy from the positive things that you've done, and hyper-analysis, over-analysis, where you're thinking and overthinking, thinking it from so many different ways, that will put you into a degree of overwhelm. Both those things will create an extra load and extra level of stress on your system. So what do we do to resolve it? First thing as ever is to become aware, to recognize, I'm running that pattern. So the key words of perfectionism will be stuff like, that's not good enough, I'm not good enough, I could have done better, they haven't seen the errors that I can see, or that one thing has ruined it, or this isn't as good as last time. Those are the key kind of conversations you'll find. Being hard on yourself if you've ever achieved anything by discounting it in some way. Overanalysis is where you just find yourself thinking about the problems, why that could be seen in a different way. And there's a kind of fastness to that thinking. It's not like an interesting, curious, creative process. It's like a driven, trying to deeply understand it by looking at it from all angles and not getting it wrong. That's the kind of link between these two things. So being aware of that is the very first thing. Second thing to do is really to ask yourself, is this useful? Because sometimes being analytical is super useful. If somebody says, hey, I've got some magic beans, you want to go, how magic are those beans? Rather than just give them your cow. Yes, Jack and the Beanstalk bit. Perfectionism. Well, doing a good job is a good thing, doing something well. The question is this good enough? And sometimes with perfectionism, your level is set so high that nothing is ever good enough. So asking yourself, is this way I'm dealing with this thing useful? Is this helpful? Is this health-giving? That can be a really good starting point. In the lightning process, this is the place of choice where you're kind of deciding, right, is the way I'm responding to this? Is this useful? The next thing you need to do then is go, well, how do I want to be instead? And that can take a bit of work and can take a bit of a requirement of someone supporting you, helping you, because chances are this is a pattern you've been running for a while. That's why practitioners are really skilled at helping you do that. Helping you work out, okay, well, how do I remove this stress? Remember I talked about stress being like, trucks, so running over a bridge, a lot of trucks, the bridge starts to fall down. Anything you can do to remove any extra weight, any extra pressure or load on that bridge is going to help your health. So if perfectionism and being over analytical are patterns that you run, they're not, the only thing that's going on in your life that's contributing to your health issues, but they are one thing. And if you can do something with that, change that would be really big, because these are patterns that often we run a lot of the time. That means we're constantly stressing ourselves, putting extra load onto our body, and anything we can do to reduce that load is going to be helpful. If you need more support on perfectionism, if you've done the lightning process, often people need extra support, then do get in touch with us. If you haven't done the lightning process yet, think about doing it or getting some work done on resolving perfectionism and being over analytical, because it's one of the things, whatever route you take, is going to make life more tricky. And you deserve maybe to have an easier time. See you on the next one.
The Lightning Process Podcast. Using the tools of the mind-body connection for health and happiness. If you'd like to know more, please visit us at lightningprocess.co.uk.